Schalke. Oh, they've done it! Simon Terodde, an instant hero! Can you believe this? Plenty attacking! No! The comeback is complete! A stunning second half from Schalke!
Blau und Weiß sein Leben lang. Herzlich willkommen zurück auf Schalke America. Welcome to episode 183 of Schalke America. I am your host, Richard Carmen. Joining me, as always, co-host Jack Mangan. Jack, how we doing?
Yes, sir. We are doing well. Not as well as we would be if it were a victory Monday, but it is an unbeaten Monday. The streak continues. Somewhat circuitous route to that result this weekend with the way that game ultimately went. But Schalke continuing to avoid defeat. Problem is not getting as many wins as we need, and there's some teams around us that are finding a way to snipe off some victories. So that's going to be something we have to address down the stretch here.
Ugh, fucking Bochum. Yeah. It is something we're gonna have to address here, but we got some things to talk about today. Obviously, we're gonna recap or review the game against Augsburg and some mistakes by us, and not only us, but also on maybe Demirovic as well. We'll look ahead to what lies in international break, including 5 called up players, including the Lord himself, Matriciani. And then we'll look at before that, we'll look at some of the results around the league that may or may not have gone our way this weekend, and how that looks ahead. Obviously, still big 6 points on the horizon, but we got to get our job done. But like you said, 8 games now unbeaten. So I mean that's pretty good in itself. 2023 has been doing pretty good for us, I think, overall so far. We've done well against top of table teams like Union and Dortmund. Frankfurt, not so much, but that's when we kind of started the role, I guess. And we have a gauntlet to end the season, but we got to kind of clean up some of our business here on the horizon. And Augsburg is the most team at present that we got to talk about. Interesting game, to say the least, I think, Jack. Head scratcher all the way around, I guess.
I don't know. I had a weird feeling going into this one, almost to the sense that like the fact that it ended in a draw, I was actually somewhat pleased with. For some reason, I had a bad feeling we were going to lose this game. We're going on this great unbeaten run. We just get a result against a pretty superior opponent in terms of Dortmund.
Unbeaten at home in the last 5-6 games too.
It just felt like this Augsburg game was a trap game for some reason. Mid-table team, you're not really thinking about it. It's right after the derby and the emotional thing. So I was actually kind of expecting to lose this. It was looking like it was going to head that way potentially for a bit. Glad we got out of there ultimately, but kind of a strange game.
It was certainly a strange game, and it started out strange because the lineups were strange, I think, at least for me, and I'll get your thoughts here in a second. Starting 11, Fairman obviously in goal, back for Brunner, Yoshida, Jensen, Matriciani. Then we get where the mix started coming in here. You had Kroll and Kraus, of course, in the middle, but so was Eder Balanta. And then in the attack, you had Bulter, Fry, and then Karaman. Karaman, obviously, with his heroics from the week before, that I guess Thomas Rice is going with a hot hand. But thoughts on the insertion of Karaman and Balanta for you?
Well, I mean, Karaman at least first. Kazuki's still unavailable too, so that right wing position is going to be potentially up for grabs. Salazar we've seen play more centrally recently as opposed to on the wing. Of course, he can play on the wing, but he's not always going to start every game. He's pretty effective as a super sub too. We've seen that throughout his time at Schalke. So who knows? I think there's always going to be some variation. Karaman scores a goal, and it's a big goal for us. To be fair, I'm not upset about him getting rewarded with a start for that.
Yeah.
He scored a game saving, a result saving goal in the derby. So anyway, but as far as the midfield, kind of the first time we've seen like a 4-3-3 general starting shape from Rice in a while. It's usually been like a 4-2-3-1. Obviously, those are similar, but we're swapping a Salazar, somebody in a more slightly advanced central role, and swapping that out for a Balanta, at the base of the midfield, somebody who's going to be significantly more physical, defensive, an enforcer back there, that kind of a thing. So that kind of tells you a little bit, I think, about what Rice expected from this game and from the opponent, what was going to be needed. How did you feel that worked ultimately, though?
I don't know. I mean, for once, and I don't say this is a good thing. For once, Balanta and Kroll lived up to their yellow card proneness, right? Both within first 10 minutes to get a yellow card. I'm like, come on, man, really? This game?
I mean, the Blanc one, I just started laughing because it was just
It
like you
wasn't a
knew
yellow.
it was going to happen. It was great.
Yeah. The referee, you could tell he was trigger happy. And we'll get to how he ended the game, mostly in our favor. But yeah, I think overall, I think the Kramer, I agree with you, but Kramer, he deserved to start after the heroics of last game. But he did nothing really. He came out for 45 minutes, and it made sense because he wasn't doing anything, not getting the ball. Blanta and Kroll and Kraus, I think, despite the yellow cards from two of them, they were okay. But I think Augsburg came with the intent. I had a feeling Augsburg, like you, that I felt uneasy about this game. Augsburg came out well. They had a wave to begin the game, as you would expect from a home team, unlike us last week. And we tried to defend best we could. They had the lion's share of the possession in the first half. They had a lot of corners, had more shots than we did. We really couldn't create anything, I think, offensively. I think this is the first game, I think, too, that Michel Frey was probably his worst game with us so far. And, that's the same because he's had some pretty good games for us. Ever since he's been starting, he's had really good moments here and there. And I think overall, it was a pretty poor game from his standards. But overall, we got the result ultimately. But yeah, from the lineup, everything seemed off. And I don't know if it's just the personnel or it's a trap game, like you said. I don't know. It just felt weird to me beginning to end.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Frey is I do feel like there were a number of moments where I noticed him doing good things off the ball, like defensively. Putting pressure on people, closing things down, forcing them into quick passes that led to turnovers a couple times. Yeah. But yeah, as far as offensively, I wouldn't argue with that too much. And yeah, I agree. Kramer was largely anonymous in the first half. I think we struggled. I mean, you have Augsburg. I think they're kind of sitting in like a 4-4-2. It wasn't easy for us to create a lot of high XG opportunities. I think a lot of the shots that we ultimately had. I mean, we ultimately, in terms of the chance creation, we created more than them, and that's even removing the penalty, which is going to be like 0.75 XG or whatever that is. But I feel like it wasn't like because we created that many significant chances. It was just an accumulation of kind of like small, not particularly great shots in the box. So at least we were getting shots in the box as opposed to just firing things from outside kind of wildly. So there's at least that. But it was not a particularly convincing performance, I think, in possession. And I think it's telling that ultimately we needed a penalty to get the goal in the first place.
And I think the question, obviously, some big question marks for me with the starting lineup was Iden got pulled, and he really didn't do well in the derby. He was probably the worst of our guys. And we even talked about it wasn't like individual talent in the game; it was a collective as a group. They were good, but Iden getting off and no Salazar to start this game. I love seeing Sidi Sane and some of these young guys on the bench. Didn't see him on the pitch, but it's an interesting lineup for me. And then looking over at Augsburg, they had some guys that. Obviously, you're going to draw some red flags from us. That guys who are talented. Obviously, Gikiewicz is a very good goalkeeper. He's a quality Bundesliga keeper. For me, the guy off the top of my head was Borussia. He's their best goal scorer at the moment. First call up for the German national team for this international break. And within the first minute or two of the game, he had a header on goal. Granted, it was over the bar, but it was a chance. And some other guys, obviously, Meyer is a guy we always have to worry about. Demirovic has always been, it seems like every team has a Schalke killer, a guy who's been a nuisance for us. Demirovic, I think, has been one for us in the past. So those are some of the guys I've been worried about. I don't know what your thoughts were on the lineup for Augsburg.
Vargas as well, another player that if you're not really paying close attention can hurt you pretty quickly. I agree. So that's what I mean. Augsburg isn't a team often that really catches the eye in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But this was, like I said, this was a game that I just didn't feel great about. They have plenty of people that can hurt you if the opportunities are created. Fortunately, defensively, I think we held up pretty well in this game as we have recently. So that trend has continued. And it's been huge for us because it's keeping us in games. Our offense has been misfiring and fortunately we didn't have a dip in form. The 2 goals that we conceded to Dortmund, that's the most we've conceded in a game since the blowout at Leipzig, which is the bad result that started this 8-game unbeaten streak. So it's rare that we concede more than one. And, fortunately we were able to keep that going.
First half statistics were interesting. Possession, like I said, they had the lion's share of the possession, 62-38 in the first half. For the most part, the statistics were fairly even. We had the higher XGs in the first half. We were at 0.44. They were 0.12. So they had a lot of possession. weren't really doing much with the ball. 4 shots on target for them, or 4 shots by them, 6 by us. Both teams 2 on target. We both had good opportunities. Fairman had a great save in the first half on Rex Bajai. What else? Corner kicks was the big thing, I think, in the first half. They had so many. And the fact that they didn't really get any XGs because of this, because we just cleared everything that they had. 6 corners to 1 in the first half. It was a huge discrepancy in that first half. And I felt like every call was going against us. Obviously, 2 yellows and all those other little knick-knack fouls that they had.
The yellow card, I'd like your opinion on this, because I felt as though for some reason the I don't know who the official was, forgive me. I felt as though he was concerned before the match started that this was going to blow up into some sort of like obnoxious physical contest. And so I feel like he was going with yellows heavy and early to try to put a kibosh on that. But what I felt it did is almost sort of make people upset and more agitated because of the decisions. Like the players were getting annoyed about it, the coaches getting, so just kind of created a little bit more of an atmosphere.
Yeah.
That's kind of like a needly atmosphere. And then I think you potentially maybe saw that with some of the challenges that we saw in the second half and things like with that coming through. So I don't know. I always find it strange when I think refs go a little bit overboard. But yeah, it's definitely some questionable tackles in this one, and not undeserved yellows from Schalke's side either.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And with both Balanta and Kral in the yellows within the first 10 minutes, I said, oh, here we go. I said, you got to get Balanta off right away. I was like, pick your poison, which is more likely to get a red card. I mean, I guess either guy, right? But at least Kral has done really well for us lately, so you maybe want to give your hat to him. So I figured one of those guys had to come out early, and it wasn't them. It was Karaman. I don't know if it was an injury, but he certainly wasn't contributing offensively. I think that's when we saw Salazar come in at halftime, right?
Like, here's the thing: when name a performance that Karaman has had where he has looked good. That moment in the derby,
last week.
No, I mean, that moment in the derby, it's a huge moment, and as we said on the podcast last week, it's a moment that's going to be remembered for a long time and probably color some of the opinion of his tenure at Schalke. But what has he done outside of that? He has not looked good consistently.
No,
or not even consistently. Almost, I can't even point to a specific performance where I've been like, wow, Karaman looked really sharp today. Like, really looked like he was going to make something happen. Unfortunately, just hasn't been there often enough. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not opposed with making a change. I forgot who came out from. Salazar came in later in the game, obviously, so it could have been him.
Wafflo saying this felt like more like a derby than the actual derby did, right? Especially with the tensions that kind of rise.
Yeah, Dortmund's like sense of urgency was so lacking last week. I was surprised by that. Like, it felt like they could have turned the screw more than they tried to do ultimately.
Yeah. So at halftime, Balanta would come out at halftime. Oh, what's 35th minute? Oh, 35th minute he came out. That's right. I totally forgot about that. Balanta came out at 35th minute. So, okay, that's why he didn't come out at halftime. Salazar came on.
He had the early yellow, then I think he threw in another challenge. That was questionable. And then Rice was like, yeah, okay, we need to get rid of him.
Yeah. Vega came in at halftime for them, for Bauer, who picked up an injury. Then obviously we had a slew of substitutions with Moore, Tarot, and Iden coming in all later in the game. But first half was interesting, no doubt about it. And then obviously you mentioned with the yellow cards and the game getting really racketed up with tension. Second half, I thought with the insertion of Vega, they seemed more composed back there, not to take anything from Bauer, but I thought Vega seemed to shore them up, at least with the ball. Also in the air, he seemed to do very well clearing things out. Obviously his afro was sticking out as a noticeable player, but I think he was doing some good things for them. And then ultimately, one of the guys, what I noticed from Augsburg was that they started ramping up the defense was shored up. They started ramping up the pressure against us, and
right at the start of the second half, almost they were, all the way up the pitch, like from the first whistle,
And that led to the first goal, which was in the 51st minute, where we were completely lackadaisical. We're acting like we're back in the days with Neuer, where we have a goalkeeper who's just fantastic with his feet and can pass the ball like whatever, and ball goes back to Ralph Fairman, and he just completely messes up the ball. Goes up in the air. Meyer gets it, gives it over to Borussia or Demirovic. He gives it right back to him, and he shoots it on Fairman. Fairman should have saved it. I mean, 2 big oops by him in one play, and it resulted in the goal. That was a bad play. That was just bad for Fairman.
Yeah, it's a bewildering decision. It's poor execution. Yeah, it's a bad play by Fairman. In terms of, is it a mistake that in the nature of the mistake makes it like an immediately good goal scoring chance for Augsburg. Not as much as some goalkeeper mistakes.
Yeah.
So I feel like there actually is some defender blame in this situation, which I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, I mean, like with Fährmann, like go long, clear the ball to like midfield from a goal kick, like go long or go to a sideline or play a short pass on the ground. This sort of like short mid-range loop dink, just in the center of the pitch in front of the box, like felt like it was not gonna go our way. And yeah, obviously, it's intercepted. It goes to an immediate counter, and then I felt like even at that point though, we had a numerical advantage in the box in terms of the center. I mean, everything was like 4 or 5-2. And Myers was unmarked on the right side of the box. Like, I don't know with like that many, how you have that many players that you can just completely ignore one of the players sitting on the edge, and it's way too easy. So I mean, yeah, it's Fährmann puts us in a bad position and puts his defenders under pressure. But I felt like the organization in that moment was really poor from Schalke, and that's a really dumb goal to concede ultimately.
So I feel, if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when on that play, the closest guy to Fährmann was Yoshida, but he was on the right side of Fährmann. So the ball would have came over the top of Jens and Matriciani, who did not catch Meyer with the run in. Is that how, if I'm remembering it correctly, or how'd you see it? You're on mute. You're still on mute.
I apologize. What I was saying is I'd have to rewatch. I don't remember who specifically is to blame, but Jens is, I think, maybe one of them that could have stepped and tried to make something happen and just kind of left somebody unmarked. And by the way, the lack of attention to potential shooters has been an issue recently. We saw that, last week with one of the goals. We saw it in the first half. Was that the Rexbajai chance? Like low to the ground.
Oh yeah. The Fährmann made a great save. Yeah.
So I mean, like that's another one where we're playing so compact and so deep that we're not stepping at all. And there's people that are just like, all right, I'll take a shot. Like if you're not going to put any pressure on me, like these are not dangerous moments, but there's such a lack of ball pressure that they become dangerous moments because people just start taking shots. So
Schlotterbeck last week, same thing.
Yes.
So
I thought that was like somewhat related. I think it's more just us falling asleep, but too often we have people that are, we're not paying close enough attention to in that regard.
Yeah. And it was Demirovic with the assist, and he was so excited by that you usually like to see what the reaction is. Demirovic must have been just so excited about that assist that he wanted to get a goal in or something, get more involved, and he was more involved. High boot to Krause's face, bloodied him up, red card. Good call. Referee initially was going to go yellow. He did bring it out of yellow. I think when he saw the blood, pulled out the red card. I think his assistants probably told him too it was a high boot. At first, I didn't think it was. I didn't catch that it was his boot that went up high. I knew he got him, but when you obviously see it, it's a clear foul. Even our friend of the show, dear friend Marie Schulte-Bolkum, she interviewed Krause after the game. She mentioned she messaged us and she was like, "Yeah, Krause's face is pretty messed up in person. It looked really bad." I mean, like, I believe it. I mean, it looked like it. Jeez.
Yeah, shout out to Marie, by the way. Nice job for her after the game. Yeah, it was strange because we hadn't looked great in the first half. Yeah, we probably created more than they did in the first half, but they had so much possession, and and like once again, even the stuff we created wasn't particularly convincing. So first half performance not great. We get into the second half, they're putting a lot of pressure on us immediately. They force a big mistake. It's another Fährmann goalkeeper mistake. Yeah. They're at home. They have the momentum, and you're sitting there and you're like, wow, this is really looking like it might start going south. And within like a minute or two, it was like right after they scored that, he does that, and it's a high. And like, look, there's no intent. He didn't mean to hurt anybody, that kind of thing. But it is a red card, based on what he did. And yeah, you saw the effect of that on Krause and everything. So, deserved red card there. And then that changed the game, or you thought was going to change the game. And then ultimately, I'm sure we'll get into, like, we didn't take advantage of it. But we had 30 plus minutes at that point to try to snatch something back with the man advantage, and it didn't happen for us. Yeah,
second half statistics: 75% possession for us, and as versus to 25% by them. XG was 1.39, obviously 0.75 with the penalty, 0.21 for them. 8 shots by us, 5 by them. Still, even though they were a man down, a lot of those shots came in the first 10 minutes, obviously for them. Shots on target 3-1 for us. We had a lot of blocked shots in the second half. Corner kicks 5-3 in our favor. I mean, we had 7 shots inside the box. So, I mean, obviously we're going to have a lot of possession, but we did nothing with it. Fry, again, I think he's still the best option at striker. but he wasn't doing much. And it wasn't until Terodde came in that we kind of saw Simon being the focal point and Fry kind of going on the wing, which he's pretty good with the crosses. We've seen obviously 2 assists in these last few weeks. But still, it was just like more comes on, and automatically, instead of keeping Bolter where he's dangerous on the left-hand side, you put him in the middle in the mix with Terodde and Fry. He gets lost in the mix. He doesn't really get much of the ball in the second half. Moore is struggling with Matriciani, or Moore came in for Matriciani, I should say, but Moore and Jens, they weren't doing much on the left-hand side, and it wasn't working. We had a lot of possession, but like you said, we weren't doing much of the ball. And
yeah, they backed off big time. I mean, sometimes
parking the bus big time.
Yeah. I mean, very deep, very compact. Ceding tons of possession to our center backs in the opposition half, like not putting any pressure on them, letting them kind of work it around. And for whatever reason, I don't feel like we worked it nearly enough on the ground. You would think with the man advantage, especially, we'd be able to get the ball to wide areas and then whip in lower, pacier crosses from more dangerous angles. And so often we play, the ball back and forth a couple times between the center backs or to a right back. And then somebody would just from fairly deep out and not from like a wide angle would just start whipping these more like lofty looping crosses and like forward balls into the box. They're a little bit easier to defend and clear out. And that's,
or they're out of bounds.
Yeah. I mean, that just seems to be most of our attack. And so I understand it's difficult to break an opponent down who's sitting that deep, but like we just looked like we had no ideas whatsoever. Yeah. And I mean, what do we have? Like 20 crosses or something in the second half? But like some absurd, like you said, it was like 6-1 in the first half. I'm sure we probably had double digit, like probably 20-ish crosses in the second half. Most of them just like fairly aimless. There were a couple, dangerous ones, a couple penetrating ones. Salazar had one to Terodde that he potentially should have gotten.
39 crosses in the second half.
So more than 20. There you go. Something insane. Like that's all it was. Like in just not enough of them were good. Yeah, Terodde had, like I said, had one I think decent chance from Salazar, and Terodde hit it wide. But outside of that, it was a lot of crazy long balls.
Crazy statistic. We lost the possession 79 times in the second half, which is not good, right? But long ball accuracy 82%. Obviously, the crosses were poor at 28%. Passing accuracy was really good, 87%. We had almost 200 more passes than they did in the second half. But obviously, it's going to be when you're a man up. And the things can go. We've seen it go multiple ways against us. When we go up a man, either the other team does really well. I think we've seen that with Union in the past and other teams. Or it'd be a situation like this where they just parked the bus and we got to try to break them down. We were struggling. You knew that when that foul happened against Kraus, you're going to have a lot of stoppage time, I think. And like I said, we weren't doing anything. So we were just hoping that we would get a boatload of.
That was like 5+ minutes in and of itself. That one.
It ended up being 10. And it ended up being 10. And it wasn't until third minute of stoppage time where ball gets worked into the box. And I think it was Bolter finding Terodde. Terodde gets fouled. Clear penalty. Gets taken down. And I remember on the watch along, I said, anybody but Terodde. I said, I love Simon, but anybody but Terodde taking this penalty kick. And of course, it's Marius Bolter step up and puts it away, but clutch.
Yeah, got to feed the hot hand. Bolter definitely the kind of like sociopathic face that you want in those high pressure situations. The kind of guy that would appear to be unmoved in those high pressure situations. Yeah, I mean, what is it? 4 goals in 4 games now for Bolter?
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. So yeah, great for him. He's stepped up and appeared when we've needed it. We're still struggling to score, but at least he's firing. Imagine if we had Fry firing on a more consistent basis or getting goals from other contributors as well. It's been kind of Bolter like the one man show, but huge. Like I said, overall, even despite that penalty, we created more. But for some reason, for me, it felt like the point was almost kind of like undeserved. I don't know. It was weird. I don't know how you felt. It felt like we kind of got bailed out a little bit. Obviously, it's a 90th minute penalty, so it's going to feel that way. But I didn't feel watching that game that we made enough of the man advantage to really stake a claim and say that we deserve something out of it. Like I feel like we should have done a lot more in that final 30 minutes with the advantage that we have. And we just kind of got fortunate in the end.
Yeah, and to your point, like a lot of the crosses, even to Williams' point here, Schalke Canada in the house, shout out to them. Lots of crosses, like you said earlier, they weren't going anywhere. They're out of bounds, like going for these Hail Marys, basically, that weren't working at all. It showed like Augsburg were smart to do what they did because what we've struggled all season long, one of the things we struggled all season long is the final third, creating those chances. And now they're giving us, hey, go ahead, try to beat us. We dare you. And we couldn't do it. And we tried, and we had crosses that went to the moon. Never nothing really daring on Gikiewicz. He had a couple of saves in the second half, but for the most part, not enough. When you're up a player, you should have a lot more chances on target. And we were just blowing opportunity after opportunity. There was no sense of urgency until maybe like 5 minutes left in the game. It was
the thing that was bothering me so much though was like considering how far they were backing off of us. It seemed like there wasn't a need to play as many long looping balls into the box as we did. Like we could have done more to advance and pass into it. Maybe we're still trying to keep like a deep defensive shell so we can't get countered. So we don't want people to advance as far. I don't know what the messaging was from the coaching staff on the sideline, but like, yeah, it was just so weird that that's what we were resorting to. It felt kind of lazy and like we just really didn't have the patience or the creativity to find a way to do anything else.
Yeah, the default seemed to go pass it back to Brunner or Yoshida or Jens or even more and just let them cross it in and see what could happen over the top. And it's like, that's not working. And I thought the guys in the front, all of them, including Kraus and Krall, too what's the word I'm looking for? Too static, and they weren't moving around enough. And just like, hey, find me, I'm open. It's like, no, you're not. You got to move around. The best teams in the world, even the Bundesliga, when they're attacking, they're moving around. They're drawing off the defense. The defense made it easy for them. They just sat there and just watched them. Say, okay, bring it to us, and we'll clear it when you cross it. I can see how that's an undeserved point. I'll take it all day long for sure, and I know you will too. But yeah, it's of the 8 games, that was one of the worst performances, I guess, in the stretch. I guess I try to remember.
No, I would absolutely agree with that. Wouldn't you? Don't you think that was the one that felt the most kind of undeserved or unstable?
Yeah,
like in terms of the performance.
Yeah.
And
you got to be lucky, right? That Tarota did get fouled, and it was deserved play. That play was deserved, but it's just like, man, this is the one game that didn't feel like hey, we were the better team, and of all the draws we've had this run here, this has been the one game I think that's like, it didn't feel like it's deserved at all, but I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep it going. Like I said, we just have to find a way to start scoring more goals so that we can turn some of these draws into wins, because the issue now is you have teams like Bochum who we beat in a relegation 6-pointer 3 match days ago.
Yeah.
And we were feeling really good because, not only was that a big win for us to get another, W on the board after a while, but relegation 6-pointer because we're depriving Bochum of that opportunity. What have they done since? They've rattled off 2 consecutive wins, right? I mean, including against Leipzig this past weekend. So it's very frustrating. Like, it's great to have sort of the defensive consistency and the consistent, points getting that we've been having, but we're just not accumulating enough points if we're not getting the wins. So we have to find a way to get the ball in the back of the net. The defense has been great. It's been the best defense in the second half of the season, probably. Certainly during this unbeaten run, it's the best defense in the league, I think.
Yeah.
The offense just continues to kind of evade us, and unless Kazuki gets healthy, which it doesn't look like, you said surgery, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless we get like that kind of like random spark, I just don't know where it's going to come from at this point. We've seen enough from Fry over the past few weeks to know that like this is not going to be like the loan signing or whatever that's going to suddenly result in him scoring 10 goals in the second half of the season. You know what I mean? Like I just don't know who it's going to come from at this point. So I think we may be in trouble there. We're still in the mix. We're within the points. I think if we continue this form, not unbeaten form, I'm not expecting us to go unbeaten for the rest of the year, but if we continue this sort of consistent points getting form, draws, eliminating losses for the most part, I do think there's a chance mathematically that we get out of this, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to go right down to the end. And I think the only way that we get comfortable is if we rattle off a couple wins in a row, and our schedule is only going to get tougher towards the end of the season.
We have 2 must 6-point game. We have 2 must win games coming up after Leverkusen. We got international break coming up, and then we got Leverkusen, and then we have Hertha and Hoffenheim. 2 games we have to win. Absolutely. If we don't win those games, we're gonna have to pull miracles out in the end of the season.
Yeah, Hertha in particular too, because they're a dumpster fire and they need to go down. And I mean, if they find a way to get a result against us, and that, I think that's probably a death certificate for us in this campaign. I don't know.
Either they beat us,
less so, but just.
So some of the results that happened this weekend that went or didn't go our way. Hoffenheim beat Hertha 3-1, and I guess in the grand scheme of things, that was a better result as opposed to Hertha winning, because Hoffenheim are only 1 point ahead of us now. Hertha stays 1 point ahead of us. So 3-1, and Hoffenheim got a red card, but they were up 3-0 at one point in that game. Stuttgart, they lost 1-0 to Wolfsburg. Bochum, you mentioned, they won 1-0 as Leipzig. I couldn't believe that result. I was expecting 6 goals from Leipzig, and they freaking Bochum pulls out another one like that. Our rivals to the east did us a favor and beat Cologne 6-1. So that's kind of what we were hoping from Leipzig, and that didn't come through. And so, and then the shock of the weekend is Leverkusen over Bayern, but it did no effect on us. But Bochum win. It puts them on 25. They're now 4 points ahead of us. 5 points ahead of us.
Yeah, they just had too many of those random results, and you got to give them credit that they've.
The 2 wins.
They haven't been good this season, but they've randomly gotten some of these things that we haven't gotten. So good for them.
Yeah, for sure. Some questions that came in first from our friends at the bottom, Stuttgart Americana. They said, "Why aren't you guys bad?" I'm sorry, man. Sorry, Travis. They're more serious.
We were in the first half of the season.
We were. Also, shout out to a 50+ donor. Check out his Twitch. Talk about all Bundesliga games. So definitely check him out. But he asked the question: if Schalke stays up, who do you think stays on the team, and who should go if we stay up? That's an interesting question because we always look at it from the perspective of, hey, if we go down, who can we keep? Who will stay? I think Salazar or someone came out recently and said, hey, if we get relegated, I'm leaving the team. And it makes sense. I think it was Salazar, but
yeah. Which I understand. I don't think he wants to do another one of those. I mean, he's proved that he's at the level where he can play at the Bundesliga level. I don't think he wants to play in the second division.
I wouldn't hold it against Bolter either. If he decided to go. I think Tordo should stay because he can only score in the Bundesliga. If we stay, no, he should stay with us. No, but yeah, I'd like to keep all these guys. I mean, like, look at the starting 11 from this past game. Of those 11, who would you want to stay if we stayed up? Kraus, I just saw the option today. It wasn't that much. Well, for us, it'd be a much.
That's the thing. Kraus and Krall are just going to be like, can we afford them, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to. I'm not the biggest fan of Krall. I like Kraus a little bit better, but like if we could find a way to keep both of them, obviously I think that'd be a big get for us. I'm obviously Karaman. I'm not really interested in him sticking around. Bolter, I was critical of him early in the year. Still have some criticisms of him, but obviously he's come up big recently and was big last year. So I think you keep Marius Bolter. He's shown that he can make an impact. Fry, I mean, do we really want to go after him and keep him? I don't know, but I do think that he has looked better than Terada, as we've talked about, and so it's more of a question like, do you want to try to like get him on a permanent deal or just go find somebody else in the market? And I think based on what he's done so far, I wouldn't be opposed to just trying to find somebody better in the market if it's available, but like not opposed. And then like Jens, I think you have to try to lock up if you can. I think he's been really classy. I mean, I don't know. Matriciani, Brunner, Yoshida, I think does he have like an automatic option if we stay up for another year?
I would imagine.
I forget what his contract is, but like, I mean, I'm not stoked about Yoshida long term, obviously, but I think with Jens, that's been a good pairing. So if we can do that,
unless we get Itakura back somehow, some way. Brunner, I like to keep Brunner. I think he's done enough. He's serviceable. He's consistent at least in the defensive side. Jens for sure. I think he's one of our top guys we have to keep if we stay up. Matriciani, just a depth player. I agree with you about Yoshida and Fairman to an extent too. Like, if we can keep him and they're fairly cheap, why not? Krall, I mean, of the three that were in the middle, Kraus for sure. You'd love to buy him if we can. Krall, if you can get him cheap or on a loan. Blanta I haven't seen anything yet. Obviously, it's only been a couple games, so it's hard to really say anything. But him and Fry, I'd be okay if we found alternatives for them, like you said. Karaman, I'm same with you. I think Bolter is someone I definitely want to keep. Teroda, I'm not ever gonna say no with him because if we somewhat find some money and really build a good team and can find service, Teroda will be useful for us. Is it gonna be the 30-goal scorer we saw in this Fight League last year? Probably not. It might be good just to keep him either way. We stay up or go down, because if you go down, at least he'll score goals in the second division. But
he does seem like he genuinely likes the club. So if he wants to stay and we can afford him for cheap, I forget what his contract situation is. I'll have to look at it again. I'm not up to speed on that.
Last year I remember.
But assuming it's not going to be insanely expensive where you can't justify it based on the production, I'm not opposed to having him as a locker room guy and like a super sub option. But this season, hasn't been there. I think a lot of that is we just don't have the squad around him to provide him the service that he was able to get last year when the talent level was a little bit more, even. So I think that's part of it. I don't think it's all on him, but at the same time, no, he has not been good. And there's also been some of his more like instinctive reachation finishes that he was phenomenal at last year.
He missed a great opportunity in this last game.
Well, yeah, that's the second half pretty one of the higher XG chances I was talking about earlier too. That was one of them. But like stuff like that he was just on target with a lot more last year. Even if it was being saved or whatever, like some of these things are just, I don't know. I feel like he's been a little bit off compared to his form last year for sure.
Yeah. Look at some of the guys on the bench. Grimo, I'll have to keep him just to see if you can get him cheap, if he's still cheap, keep him just to see what he can do. Moore, I'm done with him. Salatar, obviously love to keep him. Iden, I'd love to keep him as well, especially if it's cheap. And then Sidi Sane, because I want to see what he can do. Give him a chance, right? Why not? And then Kazuki, obviously. Kazuki's going to be one of the top guys you want to sign.
Unless you go back to Fry for a second. I mean, why keep Fry when there may be somebody like, kind of Ahmed Kudicu available on the market potentially to come in and solve our striking woes?
Marvin Peringer.
Yeah.
Bring him back.
He'll be back on loan, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we'll see.
So you might not need anybody, right? Can we bring him back for the last run?
We need as many as we can get, my friend.
Yes, this is true. But I mean, keep it Kazuki too. I mean, we don't know if it's just a one-hit wonder with him, but at this point, we can't risk it at this point. I don't know what kind of money we would get if we stayed in the league, if we got any kind of bump like that. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, good question. It's always easier to say who would go if the team gets relegated, but if they stay up, it's who would you keep and who would you not? And we got to obviously have a new sporting director. Knobel is just doing this part time, and I think May or June they're gonna have the new person come in. So we'll see about that. But yeah, it was overall interesting how that all panned out. Let me scroll, find something. Yeah,
I don't think it necessarily means anything for a significant impact to our transfer budget, in the summer or anything. But there was also the news this week that Schalke announced that regardless of which league we end up in the fall, that we forecast that we will make a profit this year as a club for the first time in a while. So that was a huge development as well. So good on those that are responsible for that at the top. There's a number of them, but nice to see that we're moving towards financial solvency once again.
It's funny. Well, all of us in Schalke Nation, Germans, Americans, all over the world, everyone's taken to this cult figure in Matriciani, and everyone's called Lord Matriciani, this and that, whatever, and for good reason, right? It's a guy who grew up with the team, and obviously he's doing well right now for us. What I found interesting is funny that Schalke also jumped on board with this, and they tweeted out the picture of Matriciani with the Ballon d'Or, so they obviously hear it too, and they're playing along with it too, which is pretty nice. But yeah, for everything he's done, he actually. Oh, whoops! I didn't mean that. He actually got a call up to the U21s, and he's not the only one. There's 4 other ones too. So 5 Schalke players on international duty during this international break, Matriciani being one of them. The 5 players are Mehmet Aydin getting his first call up to Turkey with the U21s. Deserved call up, I guess so. I mean, I don't know what Turkey's status is in their U21. I don't know what kind of talent they have, but good to see him getting a call up. Alex Kral, talking with him, talking about him. He gets a call up with the Czech Republic. Ibrahim Cisse, who we don't even see, but he's been playing with the U23s. He's trying to join with Mali and trying to make the Cup of Nations for Africa and the U23s as well. And then, of course, Matriciani and Kraus, along with Malik Chow with the U21s. I think Malik Chow made up to the senior team, but certainly Matriciani and Kraus with the U21s, which is a good addition for both of them, a good experience for them, I think. Certainly Kraus has deserved it for a long time, but good to see Matriciani getting some love for his recent form with the club.
Mentalitates-monster Matriciani. Listen, I cannot wait until he gets the senior team call up and sort of inexplicably becomes like the crux and sort of the emotional heart of a resurgent DFB in a future World Cup after a couple disappointing cycles. Happy for Matriciani. Look, I mean, like, people can dump on him all they want. We certainly have at times, but like, he's come in at this left back position. He'll come in anywhere, center back, left back, wherever you need him, and he'll put in a shift to work his ass off. There's been times he's been exposed. Recently, he really hasn't been that much. I mean, the unbeaten streak that we've had has not changed since he's been reinserted into the lineup. It's still going. That's like, 3 games on the bounce now with him in the lineup that we haven't, still haven't lost. So difficult to criticize him, and happy that he's getting some recognition for his national team. I'm sure that's a cool moment for him. The Iden thing I thought was interesting because I thought that he had some German youth ties as well. Did he make an official decision to potentially move to? Yeah, so it's called for senior team. So I guess he's making a switch to Turkey then, because I thought it was a dual national thing with him. So that's actually kind of a significant moment in his career. I don't think it's a bad decision for him. I mean, based on
better chance to play with Turkey.
Absolutely. Like I like him. I think he can develop into a good player. I don't think, based on what we're seeing from him, he's ever going to be the kind of player that's going to be seriously looked at for significant playing time in the German national team. So I definitely think that Turkey may be a better route for him. But also, I mean, if he just simply identifies with that nation more, that's entirely fair too. It's not always about, pragmatic decisions. Sometimes it's a heartstrings thing. You never know. So.
Yeah, I forget what player recently was say, hey, my mother, this is my mother's country, so for me, she's married my whole world, and so I want to, pay her back by joining the team of her youth, even though the player played in Germany, whatever. So anyway, obviously Aiden with Turkey playing, Armenia and Croatia this international break. Kral is going to play against Poland and Moldova. Cisse against Senegal, and 2 games against Senegal, obviously in the play-in and the qualifiers there. And then Matriciani and Kraus against Japan and Romania. The main thing I think with all of this, all the players, in particular the ones who play on our team outside of Cisse, everyone stays healthy. We can't afford any injuries. All these guys, especially Matriciani, Kraus, and Kral at the moment, but Aiden as well, they're key contributors to the team and on this current run. We cannot afford any more injuries. And so the last thing we want to see is these guys play and they get injured. Hopefully they play and do well and they continue their successes. But the last thing we need to see is injuries by one of these 5 gentlemen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Matriciani filling in for injured people at the moment himself, so losing him would be a big deal. Kraus and Kral both getting call-ups. That's our starting midfield pairing in pretty much every match. That's a big deal. Aiden maybe a little bit less so, but, we don't have a lot of depth, so if it's not Bruner, it pretty much has to be Aiden. Otherwise, we're using Matriciani, and then once again, he's already being used at left back. So, I don't know. The good news is that, unfortunately, our team and our squad at the moment isn't so talented that international windows are as big of a deal as they otherwise might be.
Yeah.
Where we're not having, some sort of hugely significant portion of the squad that is going away. So I guess there was kind of the hope that we were going to be able to use that to kind of get healthy and then be available for a final push. Unfortunately, more people that are in the starting lineup going away than I would like. But I mean, obviously, you never begrudge people going to serve their national team. It's a big deal for a lot of players and everything. So, just got to get fingers crossed that they, they do well, stay healthy, and nothing bad for us for the rest of the year.
Amen to that. International break is funny because I was looking ahead at this weekend schedule, and I was like, "Oh man, I can't do the watch along this weekend because I got something to do on Saturday." And I looked at the schedule, like, "Oh no, we got international break." Funny how things work out sometimes, right? So next game isn't until April 1st. Not an April Fool's joke. Hopefully it's not that game either. But Schalke at home against Leverkusen, and then again 2 big games the following weeks against Hertha and Hoffenheim Hertha, excuse me. So a lot to play for still. We'll learn a lot about the team in the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I guess, if you include the international break. But man, we talked about a lot today. Anything else you want to talk about before we get on here?
No, I'm good. Let's sail off into the smooth international break and get us some much needed rest.
Wonderful. Since Wafflo's here, I wish I had his song here so I could play us out of here with a Franky Kramer remix, but I guess we cannot. So shout out to everyone who obviously everyone on the Discord. If you're not part of the Discord yet, we just tweeted out a link. I thought you were playing it. We just tweeted out the link today, so make sure you join the Discord channel. And then everyone who joined us for the watch along this past weekend and the past weekends before that too. Shout out to you guys as well. Jack, where can our followers find you on social media?
At JMMegan, JMMANGAN on Twitter.
You would be proud on the watch along. I said your name perfectly and didn't mess it up. So
love it. Well done.
The streak continues. You can follow me at R_KHARMAN. More importantly, you can follow Schalke America. I can't even say Schalke America. Schalke America across all social media. Definitely, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube page just yet, please do. Also, give a thumbs up to the video. Same thing on Facebook. And then, check out SchalkeAmerica.com. We got try to put some articles as often as we can. And then you keep along with everything else. All the other nonsense we're going to keep doing today. So, chat. Thank you, everyone, again. Wafflo, there you go. He knows. Thank you for contributing with the music. We love it. We love it. For Jack, for myself, for the international break, we'll see. Rest up, stay healthy, including our players, and we'll catch you soon. Look out.